This passage is about human tendency to accumulate things, about cluttering, about decluttering, and other aspects. Let me quickly read the passage, summarize it for you before we look at the questions. For more than 40,000 years, intellectually modern humans have peopled the planet. Peopled the planet means populated it. Never before has any society accumulated so many personal possessions, writes the interdisciplinary team in the 2020 book, Life at Home in the 21st Centuries. 32 families open their doors. So they have researched, and this is what they have written in the book. Despite the fact that suburban households, particularly in the sprawl of Los Angeles County, are known for being roomy, house big, refrigerators are larger than elsewhere on the planet, they found food, toys, and other purchases exceeding the confines of the home and overflowing into garages piled up to the rafters with stockpiled extra stuff. So they have huge houses, they have a refrigerator where they can keep stuff, but despite this, there is stuff everywhere, in the garages and everywhere. In the first house, they chronicled 2,260 visible possessions in the first 3 rooms alone before they stopped counting. The conclusion of the study will not surprise you. American households have a lot of clutter. So the first part, he talks about research on people's tendency to accumulate things. Then now he will move on to talking about what is clutter. Definitions of what constitutes clutter vary widely. For centuries, as a result of deprivation and scarcity, both humans and animals have hoarded and accumulated not only foodstuffs but also objects, writes Joe Cook, director of Hoarding Disorders UK, in Understanding Hoarding. So there is this author who heads some place called Hoarding Disorders UK. So hoarding is a disorder, and for that they have an institution with a director. Hoarding, however, is associated with someone who has a mental condition that makes getting rid of possessions deeply painful. The author says hoarding, the word hoarding is associated with a mental condition. Why? Because when you ask a person who's a hoarder to get rid of a possession, throw it out, it's useless, it makes it deeply painful to them. Someone who is capable of ridding themselves of extraneous, if only devoted themselves to doing so, is the person Marie Kondo, the Japanese organizational icon, is targeting. So he mentions a prominent Japanese person, Marie Kondo. She is not targeting the hoarders. Who is she targeting? She is targeting someone who is capable of ridding themselves of the extraneous only if they only devoted themselves to doing so. So she is targeting these people. Only if I put my mind to it, I can get rid of a lot of possessions. If someone who is willing to do that, not for someone who should be pushed to throw something away and it will turn out to be painful. So Marie Kondo is targeting those people who are willing to devote that much time and effort to get rid of things they don't need. She is not the first one to do so. So this idea of decluttering, asking people to get rid of things they don't want, is not she. Marie Kondo, the Japanese icon, was not the first one to do so. The idea of decluttering evolved much before. In the 19th century, the English word mess evolved linguistically. As ethnologist chronicles for the journal Consumption, Markets and Culture from its origin. What is the origin of the word mess? A place in which food was served or a dish of mixed food. So what is the origin of the word mess? a place where food was served, or it is also synonymous with mixed food, a dish where food is mixed up. All right, a dish of mixed food rather. Okay, mess acquired a more, so that time the connotation was not that negative. It was just okay, a mixed dish of mixed food or a place where food was served. But it acquired a more negative connotation, sliding from unsavory food concoctions to occupying a figurative negative space in language. Slowly it became more and more negative, reaching a condition of untidiness. Whenever we call something a mess, what do you mean? Yeah, college and hostel mess is there, place where food is served. Mixed, a dish of mixed food, not khichdi, a mix of various items. But that was not so negative. It came to be regarded as more and more negative, coming to be synonymous with a condition of untidiness. In 1851, before it colonized new arenas, before it spread, its use was became more common in and more wide, right? Wider. Messy people, messy homes, all lives. So here he's talking of clutter. Mary Kondo, who talked about clutter that you don't need and how people can get rid of stuff. She's targeting those people, but she was not the first to mention clutter and declutter. The word clutter, the word mess has ancient origins, and the word mess has been given as an example, which initially didn't have such a negative connotation, became more and more negative with time. The progressive era, which spanned from the 1890s to the 1920s, had something to say about those messy persons' homes and lives. So from the 1890s to 1920s, that was called the progressive era. That era had something to say, had an attitude and an opinion on people, messy homes and messy lives. The message of this hygiene, so the progressive era, as he called it, calls it a hygiene reform movement comprising the white middle class. The progressive reform era, which was a kind of hygiene reform movement. Who made it up? Who were part of this reform movement? Who were part of it? White middle class. They were the main people. And what did they say? This view was cast through an anti-racist, anti-immigrant lens. So their view of a hygiene reform movement that they started, their view of clutter was not objective. It was delivered through a racist lens. It was delivered through an anti-immigrant lens. So its target was race, its target was immigration or anti-immigration. For it, clutter was a stand-in for the possessions that didn't fit the ideas of cleanliness, sanitation, and white middle class material culture. So the white middle class had certain standards. What was called clutter? Anything that didn't fit their idea of cleanliness, their idea of sanitation, and their idea of middle class white material culture. That was called clutter, mess. The fear-mongering over immigrants' possession, interestingly, this obviously, if you talk of clutter in terms of something which targeted immigration, it was very anti-immigration in its approach. He says the fear-mongering, they spread fear about immigrations building their possessions and just hoarding stuff. This fear-mongering over immigrants' possessions, interestingly, came around the time when the American middle class household was acquiring more stuff than it had before. So it was American middle class values and the American middle class who were accusing the immigrants of clutter, of lack of hygiene, lack of cleanliness, not conforming to their standards of what is American middle class material possessions. They were criticizing the immigrants on one side, but what were they doing? They were acquiring. The average American household was acquiring more and more stuff than it had ever before. The rapidly industrializing nation, America at that time was a rapidly industrializing nation, it fed the growth and widespread adoption of Montgomery Ward, Sears catalog, and brick and mortar department stores. People were buying more and more. The culture was, the nation was rapidly industrializing, and therefore it fed the growth of huge supermarkets like Montgomery Mart and Sears catalog, as well as brick and mortar department stores, smaller department stores. This in turn led to a new consumerism that offered a uniquely American idea that could aspire to a different social class through acquiring. So this kind of, everywhere you see there were department stores, there were huge Montgomery Ward kind of stores. What did it do? It encouraged consumerism. It encouraged the American idea that you can acquire status by material acquisition. So if I have more cars, then I've gone to the next level, that kind of a thing. Aspire to a different social class through acquiring, through their material possessions. Clear? Perhaps it's not surprising then that by 1925, American Unitarian minister Carolyn Bartlett Crane was adopting a distinctly condo-esque line of questioning when it came to home design. So this American Unitarian minister, she adopted a similar line of approach, a similar strategy as Marie Kondo. What did Marie Kondo do? She talked about clutter and decluttering, telling people why you having all this. That we can infer from what has been given in the passage. Are our houses cluttered with disguised liability? So she asked people, when you are designing a home, design it in such a way. Ask yourself these questions. Are our houses cluttered with disguised liabilities? Rooms we don't effectively use, pictures we don't see and are likely not worth seeing, useless furniture, bric-a-brac we haven't got the courage to get rid of. What kind of things are you keeping in your house? Are you keeping things which are actually liabilities? Useless possessions, paintings that you don't look at, paintings that are not worth looking at. So all these useless things, why do you need in your house? Are your houses filled with all this? That's the questioning. That's the line of questioning she adopted. So why didn't a proto-condo philosophy pervade the American home? But this philosophy, this questioning, when you design a home, ask yourself only what you need. Keep only those things in your house that you need. Are you filling your house with all these useless things? That was very much like a Marie Kondo statement. But this proto or pro-condo approach did not spread across America, did not pervade American homes. Despite the tradition of expert advice in the domestic space, America has a tradition where they seek expert advice on anything domestic, be it the design of the house or anything. But despite that tradition, these words didn't necessarily translate to their leadership. They didn't have an effect. Though women read their advice, they ignored it much of the time and continued to decorate their house with bows and figurines. They continued to use useless material to decorate the house. They continued to add clutter to the house, though they read these things. Okay, this is the passage. Let's now look at the questions. Which of the following best serves as the keywords of the passage? Whenever you see a question on keywords, go back on what exactly did you read in the passage. First paragraph, a research on the the tendency of Americans and American households to accumulate goods. So the first paragraph was about accumulation. Second paragraph and the conclusion of the research was that there is a lot of clutter in American homes, American households. Second paragraph told us what is clutter. Correct? Third paragraph told us that cluttering is different from hoarding. Hoarding is associated with a mental illness. But Marie Kondo, the Japanese icon, was talking about getting rid of unwanted possessions. And she was targeting those people who were willing to put in the effort to get rid of their possessions. So accumulation, clutter, Marie Kondo. Then he talks about decluttering. How does he talk about decluttering? Mentions the American Unitarian minister who also uh, adopted a similar approach to Marie Kondo, but not much happened. This pro-condonism did not really take off. Instead, consumerism continued. In a rapidly industrializing America, consumerism continued and people continued to keep things. All right? Those keywords, accumulation, clutter, Marie Kondo, decluttering, consumerism, has been given in option A. Kondo was not successful because America was a rapidly growing industrializing nation. It encouraged consumerism, right? Now, here, B, hoarding and mental health is not a main issue. It's just been mentioned that clutter, Marie Kondo's approach was about decluttering. She didn't target hoarders. Her target was people who are willing to declutter. So this part is fine, but this again is not a keyword. Mess, untidiness, hygiene reform, racist, anti-immigrant is only the last paragraph, and this doesn't give us the key to clutter and accumulation, which has not been given. Middle class consumerism, this again doesn't tell us anything about the main point, which is about accumulation, clutter, consumerism, which encourages clutter, theories of decluttering, and why they didn't take off in America. So the option that covers all the keywords is option 1, A. All right? Okay. Which of the following is not true as per the passage? A proto-Kondo philosophy did not spread to American homes in the early 20th century. Industrialization in America led to the mushrooming of brick and mortar. This is true. This is true. Oh, this should. Accumulation can be positively correlated to clutter. Hoarding is not a mental illness. That is not true according to the passage. Hoarding is associated with a mental condition. All right, so the correct answer is option C. All right. Okay. Why does the author talk about linguistic evolution of the word mess in the 19th century? This is a specific idea question. Let's go back to where the author mentions the linguistic evolution of the word mess. Okay, so now here, she is not the first to do so. In the 19th century, the English word mess evolved linguistically. And then she talks about how the word mess evolved linguistically. So what is the connection? That clutter, Marie Kondo was not the first to talk about things you don't need. Marie Kondo was not the first who talked about clutter. She was not the first to do so. This clutter was originally, the discussion about clutter and mess happened way back in the 19th century with the English word mess and how it evolved. So to tell you that Marie Kondo was not the first one to talk about mess, clutter, unnecessary things, right? So, to show that language is dynamic, is it to tell you that language keeps changing and definitions keep changing? No, it is nothing to do with the meaning of a word. It's rather to do with the word mess and clutter, and she was not the first to use the term clutter. How mess was a synonym of clutter and it was used much earlier. That's what it was. To introduce the word mess in the current 21st century discussion, not to introduce the word mess. The linguistic evolution is to tell us how The word mess represented something else and how it came to denote clutter later. To show through vocabulary that discussion on clutter happened in the 19th century. Yes, she was not the first one. In the 19th century itself, the word mess was used. It came to be do this, this, this. This was what its meaning. Therefore, the correct answer is C. Question 12. The fear-mongering over immigrants' possessions, interestingly, came around the time that the American middle-class household was acquiring more stuff than it had before. Which of the following can be inferred from the sentence? The fear-mongering over immigrants' possession happened. There was fear being spread. Fear-mongering means spreading fear about what this immigrants position, they are accumulating more and more, and this is against sanitation, hygiene, and middle class material possession. The idea of all this is against that. It was a hygiene reform movement. This fear mongering came at the same time that the American household started buying more and more stuff. So what can you infer from it? It highlights the racist and anti-immigrant nature of American society. Was that why he said? Then why would he talk about the coincidence? This fear, one side there is fear mongering about immigrants' positions. The other side, they themselves are acquiring more and more. So it doesn't really explain that part, right? So it's not a complete, the inference is not exactly based on the main point of the statement. It highlights the hypocritical behavior of the American middle class. Yes, it's not the American society as such. Because this reform movement, hygiene reform movement, was basically a white middle class American movement. So it didn't represent the entire society. That is another reason that was wrong. But more than that, one side there is fear mongering, and one side they themselves are building their position. So it highlights their hypocrisy, their double standards. We can do it, it's fine, but they shouldn't do it. It does show anti-immigration, but not of the entire society, right? So the correct answer is B.